I had a lot to say about Tennessee State's search for a new head coach. Now that the search is over and they've landed on Reggie Barlow, Tennessee State told me to shut up. Oh, yeah. It's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now, of course, Sam Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Make it Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off doesn't mean that the journey is over. It just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Let me know how y'all feel about the yellow graphic on the bottom instead of the blue. I'm kind of feeling it. I want to know how y'all feel, though. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $20 off your first purchase. We'll wrap up today's episode with a look at the March Madness session for HBCUs now that all of our HBCU schools, both men's and women's basketball, have been eliminated. In segment 2, Larry Vickers is moving on from Norfolk State, and he's moving to Auburn. That's not the biggest loss they could have. It also could result in you losing Kierra Wheeler. But let's kick it off. You see it on the side of the screen. Tennessee State told me to shut up. I had a lot to say about Tennessee State. I really did. And let me be the first to say I was wrong. I had a lot to say about Tennessee State in their search of replacing Eddie George. It wasn't that I didn't believe in them. It's that I thought they should have pushed their decision off to 2026. They did not do that. I didn't really get to update on how I felt about them not doing that, but I was very clear that I thought that they wouldn't be able to get a good hire. Let me tell you right now, I was wrong. With the timing that Eddie George left, I felt like it put Tennessee State way behind the 8 ball. I stand on that. But the hire that they made to replace George, I did not think that they would be able to land somebody like Reggie Barlow. This was a big-time hire, and I think the timing speaks volumes. For those who maybe do not know what Reggie Barlow has been doing as of recent, because a lot of people will know him from Alabama State. A lot of people will know him from Virginia State. So they'll use his HBCU background as the way that they know Reggie Barlow, which makes a lot of sense. What show is this? Locked On HBCU. What type of school is he going to? An HBCU. So it makes sense that a lot of fans would naturally point to his experience at HBCUs. But I want to go to the last thing that Reggie Barlow was doing. The last thing that Reggie Barlow was doing was being an XFL or UFL now, but he was being a spring professional football coach. This is a big deal because he was not a reject. He's not somebody who was like, he failed out and now he's landed at Tennessee State. No, this is not the case at all. He was an active head coach for the DC Defenders. That should matter. That should matter because when I'm looking at it's funny because I could do this whole story reflecting on how I felt about the search going into it versus where it stands today. I didn't think that they had enough time to get a really good candidate. I didn't think that they had enough time to grab or do a full search. And I didn't think that they had the timing, not about enough time, but the timing to go get somebody of stature. I thought that you could grab somebody from the Division II level. I thought that you could grab a coordinator. That's what I thought. When you're going into replacing Eddie George at the beginning of March, well behind schedule, my idea was you don't want to rush your process because you might end up with a poor candidate. My idea was go get somebody from the Division II level or go get a coordinator, somebody who feels like they're getting an upgrade in subdivision or position as far as coordinator to head coach. That's my idea. And they didn't do any of that. Instead, they went and got Reggie Barlow, who is a professional head football coach in a spring professional league a week before his season starts. Y'all hearing me? My idea for Eddie George's replacement at Tennessee State, number one thing I thought they should do was go interim head coach because of the timing. Just go ahead and push the decision off until 2026. Didn't do that. Fine. If you're not going to do that, go get a Division II head coach or go get a FCS positional coach or coordinator, rather, and let them have an ascension as far as position. Both of those things made sense as far as timing. I thought that was your best bet on the type of coach you could get. They went and got Reggie Barlow a week before the UFL season begins, a week before he is leading his team in the battle. Now they have to go get an interim head coach. This is a big time move for Tennessee State. To me, this is, I don't think all HBCUs could do this. I don't think all schools could do this, but specifically on a small school level, I do not think that any and everybody can go entice a professional coach to say, I'm going to leave my post and I'm going to be the head coach here. I think that that should speak volumes about the program and where they are right now. I think it should speak volumes on how Tennessee State, the university, is being viewed. Those are things that I do believe matter, and those are things that are the most prevalent here. This is why I say Tennessee State tells me to shut up. The mouth of the South don't know what he's talking about when it comes to time. I got to watch on, and it doesn't, the battery's been dead. I'll be honest with y'all. I got a battery on this watch. It's been dead. I have no idea how to tell time. I don't, because I thought living in a world where we don't have a head coach in the middle of March meant that we have to go to an interim route. I thought that was the case for Tennessee State. I thought it'd be the case for Prairie View. I thought it'd be the case for Norfolk State. I thought it'd be the case for, I'm not trying to name everybody with coaching vacancy. I thought it'd been the case for Alabama State. You name it. Jackson State, FAMU, North Carolina Central. You name the school. I don't care. Central State, Morehouse, you name it. A head coach leaving your program in March, right before you have spring ball. I didn't like it. That's another thing. You got this done quickly with a really good head coach who has experience. I expect that he's going to be able to install some things during the spring. Will it be difficult? Yes, it will be difficult because you are probably going to hit the spring transfer portal session pretty hard. I would assume that you would, because you're going to still lose talent. I know that he's a proven commodity. On tomorrow's episode, we're going to talk about what Reggie Barlow does bring to Tennessee State, but I understand he's a proven commodity. That being said, he is still late to the party. Like, there's some things he just can't overlook. I'll see what Tennessee State does next year. I don't know how to project how I feel about them now. I really don't. That's something I probably should think about, having an experienced head coach. And I'll bring that to you once I think about it. But this is different. Also, I knew this signing was coming soon because you started hearing that Jeff Fisher was the head coach. I was always skeptical about that. I was enticed to believe it, but I was always skeptical because his son just left as a defensive coordinator. And I just feel like if his son was going to follow Eddie George, if if Jeff Fisher was going to take the job at Tennessee State, Brandon Fisher would not have taken the job at Bowling Green with Eddie George. I mean, I know that the Fisher and George family have a connection, but I would assume that Brandon would choose his dad over Eddie. I would assume that he would do that because there's still a shadow that comes with being with Eddie George. So it's not like you're leaving a shadow. I don't want to be in the shadow of my dad. Okay, be in the shadow of George. That's what I think. I'm not saying it's the exact same, but it's close enough in my opinion. So I never really bought fully into those Jeff Fisher. I always had a little bit of skepticism. I was leaning towards believing it. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you, but I was just skeptical because of the Brandon Fisher departure. I just feel like if I'm Jeff, this is how I played it out. I was talking to Mason Smith, right? And I was like, if I'm Jeff Fisher and I'm about to take this job or I'm consideration for this job, I'm calling my son, who is a defensive coordinator currently, and saying, hey, they're talking to me about this job. And if I was Brandon Fisher and I knew Eddie George wanted me at Bowling Green, I would then say, I'm going to wait to see what happens with Pops. And if I'm Eddie George, I'm sitting there like, oh, that makes sense. I'll sit here and wait to see what happens with Pops. It wasn't going to take long. It was a matter of a couple of days. The news broke Thursday, or the report came out Thursday that Jeff Fisher was going to be the head coach. The actual news of Reggie Barlow being the head coach dropped on Sunday. So that's a matter of what, 3 days? It wouldn't have been a long phone call. I think that That's why I was a little bit skeptical. I never fully bought in to the whole Jeff Fisher thing. But anyway, that was wild, by the way. That was a wild Thursday. That was a wild Thursday. But anyway, Norfolk State head coach Larry Vickers is leaving. He's leaving the women's basketball team to be the new head coach of Auburn. But I don't even think this is the biggest thing that you need to worry about as Norfolk State tries to rebuild their program. Let me break this down as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Daylight savings can still be taking a toll on some of us. And you know what? If you're feeling that way, 5 Hour Energy has your back. Maybe it's not daylight savings. Maybe you're just tired. Maybe you are simply not getting good sleep and you want to have a little extra sunshine in the morning. So whether you're staying up late for the NCAA tournament, can't sleep, or just squeezing in a round of golf, 5 Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. We know how March Madness can get, and your sleep can know it as well, but maybe it isn't that, like I said, and maybe you just want a little bit of an extra pick me up. It gives you on the go convenience, whether I'm at a game or traveling. 5 Hour Energy is easy to grab and it keeps me refreshed. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12 to 24 pack. So, need one today? Go to the grocery store or convenience store and stack up, and stay energized. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On College Basketball. It's the time. It's college basketball's main event of the year. So make sure you're checking out our experts to stay up to date on March Madness. Larry Vickers is headed to Auburn, and honestly, it gets worse for Norfolk State because Larry Vickers is a phenomenal coach. To lose Larry Vickers is a huge deal. It's such a big deal, and it's such a common occurrence that I don't necessarily even feel the need to talk about it for an entire segment. What I will say is Norfolk State has made it to the NCAA tournament the last 3 years. You have had a three-peat, winning the MEAC every single year. You went undefeated this year in conference play. You dominated everybody. I don't think you had but one win that was less than double-digit points, right? Like you were a dominant force when it comes to your conference play. You were beating Power 4 schools when it comes to your out-of-conference play. I don't think I need to tell you just how great Larry Vickers was, just how great this team was. And you know what? A big part of that starts with your head coach, which is why I don't need to feel the need to say it. You know how this goes. The other part is players. And unfortunately, before I recorded, about an hour before I started recording this, you see that Diamond Johnson has entered the transfer portal. I built this whole segment around the idea of Diamond Johnson entering the transfer portal, or excuse me, not Diamond Johnson, Kierra Wheeler. Kierra Wheeler has entered the transfer portal, and I built this whole segment around the idea of her entering the portal. The thing is, the last two titles of this three-peat were heavily pushed by the trio of Vickers, Johnson, and Wheeler. You have now lost all three in one offseason. That's the tough part. And you knew you were going to lose Johnson. You knew that. Matter of fact, you thought you were going to lose Wheeler and Johnson due to eligibility. Diamond Johnson is out of eligibility. You can see her in the HBCU All-Star game. The JUCO rule, that impacted Kierra Wheeler. Coming into the year, you probably thought you were going to see the last of Kierra Wheeler as well. But she put out a tweet on when she put out that tweet. I don't know. It was early last week or late last week. And it was basically saying, hey, due to this new rule, the JUCO rule, I'm going to have another year of eligibility and I'm going to take advantage of it. That was the end of the statement. The JUCO rule, for those who don't know, is for players who were exhausting their last year of eligibility in the season that just passed. So the 24 to 25 academic year. If you were a senior in this year, you were out of eligibility, but you went to a junior college or a non-NCAA institution, you were granted one more year of eligibility. That was not the case for Diamond Johnson. She moved around, but all the time she was in the NCAA. For Kierra Wheeler, she spent time at a non-NCAA university, so she will have an extra season. I expect that season to be had in Auburn. If Larry Vickers were to have stayed, I think that season could have been in Norfolk State. There's no way to tell the future. I'll say this. The chances that she returned to Norfolk State was always shaky. She's been dominant. We know the type of player that she is, and that's the type of player that always gets called and say, hey, we want you, we want you, we want you. I don't know if she would have left. Once Larry Vickers left, I was very confident that she was going to enter the transfer portal. Before I could come in here and tell you about the odds, she actually did it, right? So that's a very important aspect to be said here. I expect her to be at Auburn because what we often talk about, this is something interesting. What we often talk about is the player who transfers from a smaller school to go to a bigger school being lost in the shuffle. We talk about the size of schools. We talk about the talent of players. We talk about all of those things. But one thing that does, I feel like, get swept under the rug is the idea that you need a scheme that fits you. Part of why you worked so well where you were is because a scheme fits you. That's not specific to any player. 95% of players are product of scheme. We use that term a little too negatively, a little too loosely. But the truth of the matter is, you need to be in a scheme that builds on your strengths. You need to be in a scheme that allows the coach, or excuse me, you need to be with a coach that says, you do this very well. Let me put you in that position. Kierra Wheeler goes to Auburn. She knows she has a coach that does that because she was just being led by Larry Vickers 2 days ago. It's not a question anymore. So we can talk about, competition gap. We could talk about legacy at Norfolk State. She has a legacy at Norfolk State. Let's be very clear. Kierra Wheeler has a legacy at Norfolk State. She's done that already. Now that she's looking for a new home, I expect it to be Auburn because she can go to a scheme she know benefits her. She can be with a coach she knows know how to work with her. And here's the other thing. The reason that everybody does this is because they want to try to get drafted in whatever their sport is. She want to try to reach that pinnacle. By going to Auburn, she is going to have a bigger platform. By going to Auburn with Larry Vickers, it feels like a safer bet. Does that mean that he's going to show her favoritism? No, but it means that if we know we want to build to a player's strength, we don't have to worry about that. We don't have to worry about scheme and trying to learn anything. It's going to be the same thing. It's going to be the same thing. So if I were her, I would go to Auburn. I would go to Auburn. She's already in the portal. I think that if she was going to stay at Norfolk State, there was no reason to enter the portal. I know anybody can come back, but I just don't. At the place she's in the situation we're looking at, we know what it is. So now you're losing Diamond Johnson, Kierra Wheeler, Larry Vickers. You're losing a heartbeat of that three-peat, specifically those last 2 years, of course. This is tough. This is tough. Another thing I want to say is I don't like the timing of this report coming out because this report came out before the game against Maryland. I'm not here to tell you how that impacted the team or whatever, but I do think that Vickers had the right to introduce the topic to his team himself. Because now you got to go in there and just confirm it. They didn't even just say, hey, Larry Vickers is talking to some people. They said Larry Vickers is going to be the Auburn head coach. Yeah, he's going to be the Auburn head coach. So, I wasn't a fan of that. I thought that he deserved the right to say that to his team and introduce it instead of having to confirm it. But hey, they knocked off Auburn this year, so I guess Auburn got a very close look. So in that whole risky stuff, I don't want to hear about it being risky. I understand you going from a mid-major to a high major, but that mid-major coach defeated you. And they beat another team in your conference in 2024. So I don't really want to hear about the risk this, risk that. Every coaching hire is a risk. Every single one. You don't know how anything's going to pan out. But I'll say this, Larry Vickers has led a phenomenal program over the last few years at Norfolk State. His legacy solidified. Kierra Wheeler legacy solidified. I believe that they will reunite at Auburn. That's my personal opinion. That's what I think should happen. So let's push forward and let's look at Norfolk State a little bit. Not too much because I want to talk about them as well as Southern, as well as Norfolk State men's basketball team, as well as Alabama State. So I will talk about everybody as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Now listen, Y'all know what time it is. It's time for the brackets. And you're hoping that one of those games is close to you. You would hope that one of those games is in your area, but maybe you're not lucky enough for the college basketball tournament to stop in your city. Maybe WWE is your thing. Maybe it's in the UFC. Maybe it's the XFL's coming up, right? Like, let's see. Let me do it real quick. Arlington Renegade tickets and see how much that those cost on Game Time. Because it's that simple. I want to know what's going on in my city. You do the same thing. And they already said last minute tickets, $16 this Saturday, Arlington Renegades, San Antonio Brahmas. It's that simple. Find what's going on in your city and you do the same thing that I just did. That's the promo. $16. If you're in the city, if you're in Arlington, the AMA, go ahead and check them out. It's really good prices. It's not expensive at all. So you go ahead and tap into that this Saturday. Go ahead and tap into that. Go to Game Time, download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code Locked On College. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. I would say that the March Madness 2025 was a success. And I know we didn't get a lot of victories, but I think that it played out in a way that it was a good, not great outcome. Because a great outcome would have been Norfolk State women's basketball winning the game. But you go through and you look at it, man. Norfolk State men's basketball wasn't supposed to win that game. They just weren't. And we'll get to them. Actually, let's get to them right now. So they lose as a 16 seed. And this is what Coach Jones says. He said, I'll say it once again, maybe it'll stick home this time. Out of all of the 15 and 16 seeds, we were the only one with a top 100 win. We beat High Point at their place. We were the only loss for them. We beat Alabama State. We beat James Madison, who won their league. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can run down. We played Tennessee State close. He said, credit to Florida, but they're a great team, but we shouldn't have been playing Florida. We shouldn't have played Florida. He said, as far as moving the needle to a 15 seed, it should have been moved already. It seems like every time it moves, the goalpost gets a little further. I don't know what the future holds for Robert Jones. I kind of feel like his time is coming to leave Norfolk State as well. I just kind of feel that way. I haven't heard anything, but it just feels like it's lining up for that. I don't know how to have that conversation around this because to me, I look at the net rankings. I look at that. And Norfolk State was last of the 16 seeds. And that plays a part for me. Did those high moments happen? 100%. Did those low moments happen? 100%. Did they lose 3 games in their conference play? 100%. I think that plays a factor. You lose 3 games in a conference that is not respected, and this is the outcome. I can't sit here and tell you that I've studied it, because I don't know how many times this has happened and people have been vocal about it. But you often see 16 seeds. You expect to be a 16 seed unless something great happens. And nothing great happened this year. I really do feel like you had high moments, and I don't want to take those things away. But I think when you add them in and put them in a pot next to losing conference games in a conference that's not respected, a 16 seed was a very expected result. Maybe a 15 seed you could have squeaked out because I know that you had those high moments, but I don't think it is the travesty that other people do. That's my personal opinion. But yeah, they lose to Florida. Now here's the thing. The reason I think that this is a success is it happened the way you needed it to. Let's take Norfolk State men's basketball out of the picture because they lost to Florida. Alabama State won their first 4 games. Southern women's basketball won their first 4 games. Norfolk State women's basketball played Maryland tough, and I could argue they were one of the biggest takeaways. Look, Sydney Colson, right, WNBA player, says, I hope that Norfolk State has all those players returning because they were fun to watch. First full game of the tournament that I've watched. You know, unfortunate, didn't happen, but she was riding with Norfolk State from the jump. She said, I got Norfolk State by 4. Whatever, didn't happen. But another tweet she put out there, and this was, in my opinion, the most favorable tweet that she put out there in the world. She says Norfolk State playing better basketball than a lot of teams with better seeds over the past 2 days. So when you look at March Madness, it was marked by a lot of 16 seeds, of course. The highlight, the heavyweight, the headliner, that was Norfolk State women's basketball. And they're on here getting praised consistently by Sydney Colson of the W. I think that Norfolk State women's basketball showcased what they were about. Unfortunately, it didn't come in a victory. I don't think that there's a moral victory because they have a higher expectation, but I think they left the tournament with a lot of respect from a lot of people who were watching and paying attention. You look at Alabama State, you look at Southern, and they both won their first 4 matchup. So that's changed just coming to the SWAC. And then even if you just going in general, 16 seeds get beat bad. I'm here to tell you this. 16 seeds get beat badly. Okay, let's look at how bad these 16 seeds lost. Southern lost by 38 points. USC, now I'm just going to name the number 1 seeds in the women's basketball tournament. USC beat their opponent by 46. South Carolina beat their opponent by 60. Texas beat their opponent by 44. They were the only team, Southern was the only team to lose by less than 40. I'm not sitting here to try to spin any moral victories, but I refuse to allow the idea that HBCUs, oh, look, that's yes, they got beat because they're a 16 seed. And most teams who are 16 seeds are going to get beat. You look at Alabama State, they lost 83 to 63. That's just 20 points. You look at Norfolk State, they lost 90 to 69. That's 26 points. So I guess technically they did cover the spread. Technically, they did cover the spread. But you look at Duke, Duke knocked off their team 93 to 49. That's almost a 50-point victory in the first round. You look at UH, they knocked off their opponent 78 to 40. That's almost a 40-point victory. These were not the situations for Alabama State and Norfolk State. I just feel like that's important to mention. I wanted to throw that out there because as a media member, I think it's important to add context. So when I say that it's a success, I don't want to hear, man, but Southern got thrashed. Norfolk State got thrashed. Southern got thrashed. I don't want to hear that. Yes, it did happen. I'm not ignoring it, but it was also a very expected result. If you look around the tournament, it's what happened everywhere. It actually was not as bad for them as it was for others. And if you're looking at Southern women's basketball, Alabama State men's basketball, they both won their first 4 when we're talking about competing on an even field. That happened. And who came out victorious? Southern and Bama State. And they brought a little bit of change to the Southwestern Athletic Conference. Meanwhile, the headliner walks away getting the respect of many people who they might not have thought that Norfolk State had a chance. That small school they ain't got a chance. Yeah, they did. And ultimately, the reason they lost, I just want to throw this out there. They had a hole. It felt like Kierra Wheeler was out for way longer with foul trouble than she was. But she only didn't play 5 minutes of the game. But it felt like those 5 minutes were forever. Then Diamond Johnson got a little cold in the second half. But in general, what happened is Norfolk State dug themselves into a hole in the second quarter, and every time they went to close it, it was just never enough. And it just close, expand, close, expand, close, expand. That was the problem. And then the 3-point shooting of Maryland late really put the dagger in it. That was the story of that game. Anyway, on tomorrow's episode, we'll be talking about Aaron Smith's pro day numbers, and we'll also talk about what Reggie Barlow brings to Tennessee State. So in the meantime, in between time, be here tomorrow. It's only 12 hours from now, guys. It's only 12 hours. 6:30 p.m. now, Central Time. We'll be back at 7 a.m. Central Time. So make sure you set your clocks and you listen to me ASAP. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care. Stay blessed. Peace.